You're on mute. That was apparently me tonight. But again, my name is Becky Mathieu. I am a child and youth worker and registered psychotherapist, and I work at the Break Shop Clinic at CPRI. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, Break Shop name will make a little bit more sense, because I know when we think breaks, we often think of cars. So we're going to kind of make the correlation between diagnoses and what we call leaky brake disorders or disorders of disinhibition, and just some of the struggles that can certainly come from either having a child with leaky brakes, having leaky brakes ourselves, and some possible strategies that may be helpful. What I will say is that this is just a very brief overview. When Becky invited me to come tonight, I was very thrilled to be a part of it. And she said, okay, can you fill an hour and 15 minutes? And I said, yes, the problem will be only keeping it to an hour and 15 minutes. So I've got my timer on it for me. Thank you, Becky, because she will be giving me the countdown warning, just so I can try to say everything that I want to say within an hour and 15 minutes. But this may even be more just to whet your palate, because we do have other presentations that are longer in scale. So if that's ever something that anybody's interested in, we are happy to be able to support people with that as well. So without further ado, I am going to hop right on into the presentation so that we do have enough time together. Okay, first I want to introduce my little friend Johnny here. So you can see some of the behaviors that may have come up on the screen there. And these may be some of the behaviors that we see in the youth that we work with. And if I were to be able to actually see people on there and I say, hey, does this sound familiar to anybody? I'm sure that I would see a lot of hands for people that we're either supporting or living with that may have some of these types of behaviors or labels. So we might see, somebody who is crying a lot or swearing or throwing things, raging. They might have the label of bad kid. They're unmotivated. They're not trying hard enough. They're such a pain. They know how to push my buttons, and they're doing everything that they can to be able to do that. So when we're working with kids that are exhibiting that type of behavior, there may be various different meanings that we put to some of that behavior. And there's something that we call the conventional explanation or the conventional view when it comes to this type of behavior. So we might see a youth that is exhibiting some of those things that I was just mentioning and think they're just being lazy. They're not trying hard enough. Maybe it's the parenting. Maybe if their parents were stricter, maybe if they did this, maybe they weren't, guided correctly. So now it's the parents' fault. So we've got a youth that's unmotivated, not trying hard enough. Parents are being blamed in the whole mix. If he just tried harder, then things would get better. He could do well if he wanted to, is how we would look at it through that conventional model or the conventional view. But a question I would pose is, why would a child do poorly if they had the skills to do well? That would be like a youth that was maybe really skilled in math or a certain subject, and they go in to write the test and they just bomb it on purpose because they can. You wouldn't typically see that because they have the skills to do well in that area. So the same then becomes true for the youth that we're exhibiting when we see some of that behavior. So then what I would want to ask is, could there be another explanation? Maybe some of those things that we mentioned are a possible explanation for the behavior, but maybe there's something else that can't be the only explanation to that. So see, in the Break Shop, we don't subscribe to that conventional view or philosophy of those things that I mentioned, the unmotivated, the manipulative, poor parenting skills. He's doing it on purpose. He's lazy. He's just trying to get attention, negative attention seeking. So we try to adopt another way of understanding our kids, which is consistent with the approach by Dr. Ross Green that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this presentation as well. And hoping that by the end of this too, that gives kind of everybody here or that may be viewing this at some point, another possibility to view the behavior through a different lens. But again, if I think about that conventional view and how we see behavior, how we attempt to intervene and work with these youth comes from what we call the more traditional model. So if my philosophy is kids do well if they want to, then my assumption if they're not doing well is that they just don't want to, or they're negative attention seeking, or they're just, doing it on purpose to push my buttons. So then if that were the case, my goal then becomes to make them want to. And how do I make a child want to do that? Well, I reward or punish the behavior that I'm seeing. So, if you don't do that right now, your Xbox is gone until you're 30. Or, if you do this right now, then I'm going to go get you this, V-Bucks, which kids tell me is a really great thing for some of the video games. And so we're kind of scrambling here trying to get behavior to change through that reward and punishment. We might think that the cause of this behavior was either parenting or other adults just giving in whenever they start to maybe have a temper tantrum or things aren't going their way. And again, we might apply some of those conventional view labels like being unmotivated, attention-seeking, manipulative. And then the intervention becomes, well, we're just going to teach the adults or the parents that are working with them to be stricter with them, show them who's boss. And that might be the approach that I take in an attempt to change some of the behavior that we're seeing. But often that really just leaves us spinning our wheels. So again, the question is, could there be another explanation to the behavior? Is it really just because of poor parenting or lazy child behavior? Or could there be a different view? And the view that we've adopted in the Break Shop, that again comes from Dr. Ross Green, is that kids do well if they can, not if they want to. So it starts to shift our understanding of the behavior that we might be seeing the youth exhibit. And how I see the behavior will directly correlate with how I attempt to intervene or guide my intervention for that behavior. Again, if I think it's that, kind of button pushing, lazy, purposeful behavior, I'm going to intervene as such using those kind of things from the traditional model that we just saw. But there may be another way in which we can determine that. But in order to understand, so if kids aren't doing well and we know it's because they can't, then our job now becomes being that detective and starting to figure out, why are they not doing well? What could possibly be getting in the way that is preventing them from successfully completing these tasks or ending up in rages or meltdowns? What may be getting in the way? Because again, we ask the question, why would a youth or a child handle a situation poorly if they had the skills to handle it well? Because really, after the rage, after the tantrum or the meltdown, things didn't really bode well for them. They're not getting the things that they wanted. There maybe are consequences that they now have to deal with, or relationships that may need repair, or they feel that remorse and guilt afterwards, and that doesn't feel good. So what we're going to start to learn about is understanding some of these behaviors through what Dr. Duncan McKinley, who is the creator of the Break Shop Clinic, as he describes them as leaky break disorders, and the pathways and triggers that can be contributing to some of the behavior as described by Dr. Ross Green. So I want to take a look at this now through the skill deficit model. So if we understand kids do well if they can, not if they want to, therefore, if they're not doing well, something must be getting in the way, leads to that these are actually skill deficits then. And so once we start to learn what some of these skill deficits may be, now we have a starting place. Now we have something that we can actually teach them. Just like if a child was not doing well in math or not doing well in English or science, we wouldn't punish them to do better, because that's probably not going to be as helpful. What we would do is we'd probably get them a tutor. We would find the area where they were struggling and enhance their skills and abilities in that area. So if we take a look at some of these things as skills that require development and practice in order to be able to be good at it, we see things like flexibility and adaptability. Because sometimes we think of some of these things as, oh, it just comes naturally with age. Oh, kids will just kind of learn to grow into it. And we forget that this is actually a skill that needs to be developed, just like tying your shoes, just like math, just like any of those other things that we learn as we continue to age and mature. So things like change in routine, difficulty shifting, either from a task that they're completing or even kind of doing some of that cognitive shifting, taking somebody else's perspective or ideas or understanding and say group work, meeting new people, trying new things, trying new food, trying new subject, getting a new teacher, meeting somebody new in different areas, or even things like frustration tolerance, accepting change, surprises. We're going to be talking in a little bit that surprises can be really difficult for some of our youth with leaky breaks, even if it's a positive surprise. Sharing attention, sharing your own belongings, sharing time, all of those things, having to wait your turn, not being able to be the first one in line. If we look at all of these things in terms of these are actually skills that require development and practice, we can see that if anybody is struggling in any one of those areas, they're going to be having really difficult days because those skills are required pretty much every day, all day long in their different environments. So now we want to kind of shift our understanding of the behavior, but also how we respond to the behavior that we're seeing in terms of understanding it as that skill deficit model, and how would we then teach them the skills that are required to do better in those moments or even throughout their day. So now our philosophy has shifted, as you can see, not that kids do well if they want to, but kids do well if they can. And so now our assumption is if they're not doing well, something is getting in the way. And so our goal now becomes finding out what it is that is getting in the way. And one method that we can do that we find really effective is using the collaborative and proactive solutions to problem solving, which again, we'll be chatting about a little bit later in this presentation, which was developed by Dr. Ross Green. And now we know the cause isn't button pushing, purposeful behavior, but it's that skill deficit in those areas that we just talked about when it comes to flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance. And now the labels that we apply to the behavior is a skill deficit, a learning disability in those areas, or potentially even a developmental delay in those specific areas of flexibility, adaptability, and frustration tolerance. And now our intervention is assess what are those skill deficits, find out what the deficits are, and then teach them those skills. Just like if we found out that they were struggling in math, we would teach them the math skills that are required. So I want to take a moment and just describe the leaky break disorders that you can see on the screen here. So again, I mentioned I work in the break shop clinic. And so youth often come to us with lots of different letters behind their name or, different diagnoses that they have received from doctors. And often when they're coming and meeting us for the first time and they'll say, yeah, I have TS or OCD or ADHD. And we'll say, okay, what does that mean? And very often they reply, I don't know, or I don't know, it means I get in trouble a lot, or it means I need to take medication, or I don't know. Some will even say it means I'm a bad kid. And so Dr. McKinley, who again was the creator of the Break Shop Clinic, took those disinhibition disorders and put it into a youth-friendly analogy and understanding of those different diagnoses using the the leaky break language, which hopefully then makes the Break Shop title of our clinic make more sense, because you definitely do not want me working on your car, because if I did, you would not be able to drive it afterwards, but I can help potentially with some people breaks. And so if we look at the diagnosis of ADHD, that is a leaky break over attention and impulsivity. Often people think when somebody has ADHD, oh, they don't have any attention, when in fact it can be the opposite. We're gifted in attention. We notice everything that's happening. Where the difficulty comes is from modulating the attention or being able to focus your attention to the task at hand for as long as you need that attention to be sustained. Or it could be different struggles with executive function. And that's everything from getting started on a task, understanding time. There can be a lot of time blindness that comes, underestimating how much time it takes, procrastination, clutter, remembering steps to instructions, especially if there's multi-step instructions that they've been given. And so all of those would be areas of struggle that fall under that ADHD or leaky break over attention and impulses. And if they have that leaky break over the impulsivity as well, it's difficulty stopping and thinking before you act. So these are the youth that you might see kind of leap before you look or fire before you aim. So they may be doing some things in the wrong order. So they kick the ball out in the road and they're already halfway into the road before they stop and look both ways because their braking system wasn't working at the time that they needed it to be working. When it comes to obsessive compulsive disorder or even anxiety disorders, we describe that as a leaky brake over your thoughts. So when we think about anxiety, for example, or anxious thoughts, every single one of us get anxious thoughts that pop into our head or, kind of intrusive thoughts that might pop into our head regularly, but we have a working braking system. So the brake engages on our brain and we're able to say, wait a minute, I'm not actually at risk of this. This isn't something I really need to pay attention to. It's a false alarm, and we can move on pretty quickly. But if somebody has OCD, then what happens is the anxious thought comes into their head, their braking system's stuck, so it's not engaging when they need it to, therefore the thought gets stuck. And it starts to often perseverate on that thought. And what happens is the anxiety begins to rise because of the thought or the obsession that they are having. And so in an attempt to alleviate some of that anxiety they're experiencing, they may engage in a compulsive behavior. And the problem with that is that it works momentarily, but we often describe it as, or compare it to like a mosquito bite, right? When you have a mosquito bite, the itch of that mosquito bite is the thought that they're experiencing. The scratching of the itch is the compulsive behavior that they're engaging in. And when you think about it, you go, when you scratch that mosquito bite, but the problem is you have to keep scratching because it gets itchier and itchier. And the same goes for that OCD. The more we give into the OCD, kind of the itchier that scratch gets, and the more we need to do what it is that OCD is telling us to do. And very, very quickly, I'll just mention there's 4 different types flavors, if you will, to OCD. Often people identify the contamination flavor. Oh, if you have OCD, it means you got to wash your hands a lot or you can't touch certain things. And that is true for some people that have OCD that may have that contamination flavor where they are, worried about either contaminating themselves or someone else or getting sick or radiation or sticky things. So they do avoid touching or excessive washing or hand washing or showering. And that would certainly be one flavor. But there's also the flavor of what we call just right OCD, and that's where behavior has to be repeated until it feels just right, or until something looks just right, or there's certain rules that need to be followed. So, all the Lego has to be color coordinated, things have to be arranged by size, everybody has to sit in their seat at the table, and you can't move that around, shoes have to be pointing a certain way when you're at the door, everything has to be arranged perfectly, in your desk, or so there can be things that are very ordered, or any time somebody says or a youth says, I just have to do that. Chances are that could potentially be that just right flavor of the OCD. Whenever there's a rule or a must or I have to, you could potentially be in some of that just right flavor if they have a diagnosis of the OCD. And the problem with the OCD is it's not rational, right? So you might have a desk that is completely neat and tidy, everything in its exact spot. And if you move something a centimeter, then they're going to know, and it's going to be very, very difficult for them to handle that, potentially even raging over it. Yet their bedroom looks like, a cyclone has gone through there. The Tasmanian devil lives in there. And it's like, how does that make any sense? And that's just the way OCD is. OCD might have decided that the desk is his territory, but doesn't care about the bedroom. And so that can also make it appear very behavioral when in different environments around different people, we appear to have different abilities and what we can handle. The other 2 flavors very quickly, are Leaky is the hoarding. So collecting items, it might be an item that they started off collecting because they enjoy it. And now it's just gotten out of control and they've got 850 and they can't sleep on their bed. And there's no room in the dresser and you're barely room in their bedroom, or, that can be something that they once enjoyed collecting, or it can be even objects that really don't have any type of meaning or make sense. And it can be anything from sticks, rocks, wrappers, shoe boxes, really any kind of pencils, pencil erasers. It really can be anything that they're just not able to throw away. And the last one that can be sometimes quite difficult for youth is what we call bad thoughts, OCD. And that would be where very scary, intrusive thoughts or pictures are put in their head that, something horrible could happen to themselves or to a loved one. And they may be engaging in certain compulsions in order to cancel out that bad thought. So, we think about the saying that we might know, step on a crack, you break your mother's back. Somebody with OCD may have, similar type rules that they believe to be true, or they're not going to take any chances to find out, because what if that's true and something horrible happens to their loved one? So I have to get perfect on this test, or something bad could happen to them or to me, or I have to say this many prayers in this order without leaving out anything, or I have to start back at the beginning and repeat it all over again, or something bad could happen. And so those are the different flavors of the OCD. I will mention quickly, for these different leaky break disorders, we do have treatments that we offer. So for youth that have OCD, we do offer the exposure and response prevention treatment, which is the gold standard treatment for OCD. If they have Tourette syndrome, or a variation of a tic disorder, a suspected tic disorder, we describe that as a leaky break over movements and sounds. So the inability to put the brake on and not let certain vocalizations, sounds, or movements out. We call those movements and vocalizations tics. So they're not able to stop them. Again, it can look very behavioral or purposeful, depending on the type of tic or where they are. Often when things get very quiet, it might be, a sniffing tic or a coughing tic, or even a word or a sentence. I will say that some people will say, oh, if you have Tourette syndrome, isn't that the swearing tic, or don't you swear? And that is in 5 to 10% of all people with Tourette syndrome or less. So it's a very small portion of people that actually have Tourette syndrome have the, swearing or inappropriate words, tics. One thing I'll mention about the tics is that giving them any kind of attention can actually increase the tics and make them worse, or even positive attention. Like, oh, wow, that throat clearing tic sounds really painful. Can I get you a glass of water? Really kind gesture. But if we're doing that in response to the tic while it's occurring, we've given it attention, we've named it, and even that positive attention will increase the likelihood of that tic coming out more. Now, that doesn't mean we would never give the poor child a glass of water. We just wouldn't do it in response to the tic, and any of those interventions would be available anytime. So the child can go get a drink of water whenever he needs it, or he keeps a bottle of water right at his desk for easy access for whenever he needs it. And the gold standard treatment for tics or Tourette syndrome is CBIT, which is a comprehensive behavioral intervention for tics, which is also provided through the Break Shop as well. Leaky breaks over behavior. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot, because a large portion of the presentation is centered around kind of that reactive rage, or what do we do when we're dealing with so many different leaky break disorders. So I will be chatting about that in a little bit more detail, but there's also a leaky break over our sensory input. So it could be sensory integration disorder, or some form of sensory sensitivities where they may be hyper or hyposensitive to certain inputs. So for example, some youth may need lots of noise to be able to register it. So things are played very loudly. Even, maybe while they're studying, they've got all different kinds of noise happening in the background because they're needing all of that sensory input, where others, any kind of noise can be very overwhelming. They might even be so in tune that they're hearing the lights buzz. We hear that often. Why are the lights so loud? So they're really kind of hypersensitive to some of that sound. And that can go for any of the different senses, the sensory input that youth have. Some might need more proprioceptive input, really feeling that squeeze to understand where they are in space. And other youth, even just a light touch would be overwhelming for them. Mm-hmm. And so the way Dr. Ross Green talks about these behaviors is through what he calls pathways, or understanding pathways and triggers. And so if we look at it in terms of executive functioning skills, again, that was similar to what I was describing under the leaky break over attention and impulses, which is the ADHD diagnosis. So there may be things like organization, planning, working memory, pulling on hindsight to determine forethought. Hey, I remember that consequence I got yesterday. It wasn't very fun. I'm going to change my behavior and doing something different today so that doesn't happen again. All of those things would fall under that executive functioning skills. And so if they're struggling in that area, you can see where they would be having a really difficult time either at home or at school in their different environments. There's also cognitive flexibility skills. And so those would be those are the ones that are necessary to help us avoid that very black and white thinking, that very literal thinking, difficulty shifting from my own idea to somebody else's, or all of those things. The very rigid thinking would be kind of some of those behaviors you would see that's with somebody that may be struggling with some of those cognitive flexibility skills. Language processing skills. So those are the skills that allow us to communicate how we are feeling, to express, our needs to other people, to be able to understand information that is coming at us when other people are, describing those things for themselves as well. So again, takes that high level of skill development to be able to use our words, first identify how am I feeling, use my words to portray how I'm feeling, communicate that, and receive communication back in order to make sense of that. The emotion regulation skills. Okay, there we go. Emotion regulation skills is exactly that, being able to keep our emotions in check when we're starting to feel frustrated, being able to self-soothe, self-regulate when we're becoming more upset. Even as adults, we know that these are skills that are required well into adulthood. Do not hit send before you, after you type that email, wait 24 hours to 48 hours. That is a skill that is required to do that, so that it allows us time to regulate our emotions, make sure we're still saying what we want to say or doing what we want to do. And again, social skills, many different types of social skills required of our youth all day long, being able to share, being able to take turns, being able to wait in line, being able to communicate with them, being able to understand, sarcasm and jokes, and any of those kind of reciprocal type friendship skills that would be required. So you can see there's a high level of skills that are required for our youth daily. And if they're struggling in any one of these areas, either because of those leaky break disorders as described by Dr. McKinley, or any of these pathways and triggers as discussed by as described by Dr. Ross Green, we can see where they may be really struggling. So this allows us to try to start to learn which of these skills are they maybe lagging in, and start to teach them some of those skills in those areas. So again, why do we focus on the leaky breaks and the pathways? Really for two main reasons. To understand that most of the maladaptive behaviors are not intentional, and that it's the skill deficits that are driving some of those explosive outbursts that you may be seeing or having to deal with. But it also then helps us to identify specific cognitive skill sets that require accommodation and training. So once we know the area where they're lagging those skills, we can begin to teach them some of those skills. So if we know they're really lagging in, working memory and being able to remember or retain the steps that were required to complete a task, then maybe we can build up their skill set by coming up with a checklist where they can go back to the checklist and have everything written down, or pictures to see what are those steps that are required, or give them 2 steps at a time and then come back and get more information, and I'll send you out with 2 more steps. So they're able to start building some of those skill sets. And the more they do it, and they do it over and over again until it becomes rote, it puts less strain then on that working memory. Okay, this is a video that I do believe we are going to have time to see. I really do like this video. It's video kids to their teacher, but I love it because it really does apply to any adult, really, that is working with youth or has kids in our lives, because I just love how they describe it and some of the things that could be helpful for them. Again, they're talking specifically in the school setting here, but I do think that this can apply to a wide variety of places as well.
Dear teacher, I know it doesn't always seem like it, but I really do want to listen and learn.
It's just my brain is kind of different. So this is what I'd like you to know about me. I have to move, or I really can't pay attention.
Even though I'm not looking at you, I can still listen to what you're saying.
If you tell me, sit up straight, now I have to use all of my brain to do just that.
It makes me feel sad when you tell me to try harder
even though I've already tried as hard as I can. I actually listen better when I'm rocking in my chair.
When you give me a bunch of directions, I start to think I will never remember all of this.
Sometimes my mom or dad ends up doing all of my homework. So here's how you could maybe help.
Let me get up and move while I'm learning.
Let me look wherever I want when you talk to me.
Let me rock or slouch in my chair.
No matter what, please don't take away my recess. Give me help I could do all by myself.
Make directions very short.
Just ask me, what does your brain need right now?
And one more thing. My brain might be different than yours, but it's still amazing.
Sincerely, your student.
Your student.
Your student.
Your student.
Dear
Again, I just love that video because it talks about some of the struggles that these youth might be experiencing in the classrooms in ways that might make it easier. So again, building up that skill set to be able to pay attention and listen. And it might be something as simple as allowing them to move, having a rocking chair, to sit in while they're listening to either a conversation or to a lesson, or having fidget items, which we're going to talk about some other different strategies that we might be able to build into their toolkit that might make things a little bit easier for them. But I'm going to shift a little bit right now to talk about our frustration beaker, because we know people that have these leaky breaks are dealing with a lot of things all day long that many people may not have to experience. And because of all those things, filling what we call their frustration beaker, that's when we often see that frustration beaker overload, or what we would call the reactive rage or meltdowns or temper tantrums, which can be incredibly frustrating for them, but also incredibly frustrating for those that are attempting to support them and love them, either caregivers, parents, teachers, extended family members, workers. It can be very difficult to manage through that. So I'm just going to grab my frustration beaker here. And so just to introduce you to your frustration beaker, because the thing is, we all have a frustration beaker. So everybody here, myself included, and everybody on screen gets frustrated, right? So we all have a frustration beaker. And my next question, usually if I'm live with people, is asking, so is everybody's beaker the same size? And often people will say no, because some people overflow more often than others. So they must have a much smaller beaker, or no, I don't think so, because I don't react the way that they do when I'm upset. But the reality is everyone's beaker is the exact same size. It's not the size of the beaker that is impacting the amount of behaviors or overflows that we may be seeing, but it's the amount of beaker fillers that we're going to be talking about. As I mentioned, some of these youth are dealing with things that I don't have to deal with, or other people don't have to deal with. So they have many more beaker fillers that they're also navigating throughout their day. And if they don't have the skills to handle that, or to be able to manage through some of those emotions, and the beaker is just going to continue to fill until it overflows. And everyone reacts poorly when it's full, no matter what it is. I mean, I might not be throwing chairs across the room or, doing some, major outbursts, but if my beaker is overflowing, I don't look good either. I'm not, speaking as kindly as I can. Maybe my voice is raised, my face looks very different. I might be saying things that I don't mean and regret later. So nobody looks good when their beaker is overflowing. So I want to do just a quick demonstration here. And so I'm going to get my water out here and hope that this goes as well here as it did in my head, because I'm going to have to shift the camera for a moment, because I just kind of want to show you what it'd be like to be a day in the life of little Johnny with all of these different leaky breaks that I just described. I'm just going to move my camera down for a moment to show you the frustration beaker here. So little Johnny has all the different leaky break disorders that I just described. So he has Tourette syndrome, he has OCD, he has struggles with his sensory input, he has ADHD. So he has a lot that he is dealing with and navigating. And by the way, this little Johnny is just a made-up character for the purpose of this presentation. But you see, when little Johnny gets up in the morning, he's got a really sore shoulder because he has a tic that has been bothering him. So when he wakes up, he already has a little bit in his beaker. But as you can probably see here, he still has a lot of thinking and processing room. So he's not close to the outburst rage part, but it's important to note that some people's beakers are never completely empty. So he may have already woken up with a little bit in his beaker there. And little Johnny also has OCD, and his OCD says he can't have any lumps or bumps in the blanket while he makes his bed. So he's now made his bed 6 times, and his mom is yelling at him to hurry up because he's going to be late for school. So that is putting a little bit in his beaker. When he finally gets his bed made to the point where he can move on, he's running upstairs for breakfast and he's super excited because he's going to have his Fruit Loops. But his little brother had just finished the last of the Fruit Loops. And all that he has left is Raisin Bran. And because he was running late, his mom already added the milk to the Raisin Bran. So it's soggy Raisin Bran. And then he goes outside and it's raining lightly and he doesn't like the way his jeans feel and the tags on his shirt are bothering him. And he gets on the bus and somebody is sitting in his seat and everybody knows that that is his seat to sit in. So here we are already, I'm not sure if you can see that, already almost completely full here. And he hasn't even made it into the class. But because of all these different leaky breaks and all those things that are impacting, it's been filling his beaker already throughout the morning. When he gets into the school, the light is flickering, which is bothering him, and it's crowded in the hallway and people are bumping into him, and that's filling his beaker because he doesn't like to be touched as well. And right before he goes into class, he's about to go into math class. Now, little Johnny typically does not like math class. He would much rather be in phys ed. Now, when he gets to the classroom, the teacher says, hey, everyone, change of plans. We're not actually doing math today. We're going to do phys ed. And boom, little Johnny's beaker overflows, full on meltdown, freaking out. And we would look at that and say, what the heck just happened there? Does Johnny not like phys ed anymore? Did he want to do math? But one thing that's really important to note is youth with leaky breaks often find it difficult to navigate surprises or plans that suddenly change, including positive surprises. Johnny did not have enough in his beaker to process that that was a positive change and that things were shifting for him cognitively and in his schedule. Now, if little Johnny's beaker, for example, had say just, I'll even do that a little bit more. If his beaker had say been down here when he was given that information, it may have filled his beaker a little bit, but he wasn't too close to the top where he was risking that overload. So it's important not to look at the last thing that overflowed somebody's beaker and think that that will always be the trigger that always overflows the beaker. What we'll be looking at is how full was somebody's beaker right before that information was given that could have potentially overflowed that beaker. Okay. I don't think I soaked too much stuff there. I'm going to adjust my camera here. Okay. I think I did that without too much of a disaster. I'm just going to skip through the slide. This is just kind of showing all of that, all those skill deficits they might be experiencing, hypersensitivity, hyperenergy, all those things I just showed you with the water and that overflow. So in our clinic, we have what we call the self-management program, which is a program where the kids can learn all about their frustration beaker. And we learn various things such as what fills your beaker, how do you know your beaker's filling, and then what the heck do you do to help empty your beaker. All of this information that I'm going to be showing you is available on our website at www.leakybreaks.ca. So if it's something that you're interested in trying out or doing beaker keychains like I'm going to show you, you are welcome to print the material and use that as much as you like. But they learn about their frustration beaker. We have different ways in which they can show their beaker. So for example, we've got beaker keychains where they can show the different level. This is really helpful because if their beaker is starting to fill, they're probably not going to have the same access to language and processing skills and be able to, speak politely or do those things. So being able to have a visual where it can eliminate some of that talking can be really helpful. And what I love about this material is that it's necessary for some, so our kids that are struggling with that skill deficit model, but it's good for all. I use this beaker check in myself, even at home or at work, we use this as well. So it helps kind of reinforce that, hey, we all have beakers. And so it can sometimes help eliminate some shame that some of our youth will attach to, needing to, oh, I have to learn this because I'm the bad kid. To say, hey, you know what, we all have frustration, and this can be good for everybody. So again, we learn what fills our beaker. What fills my beaker is going to be very different than what fills other people's beakers. So it's a very individualized program where they complete a fairly lengthy checklist that includes some of those pathways and triggers from Dr. Ross Green's assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems, as well as some of the different components to the leaky breaks. And they can start to identify what are some of those beaker fillers. When we know what some of the beaker fillers are, it helps those meltdowns or rages become a little bit more predictable. And it also then starts to depersonalize some of these things, because we often hear, oh, it's my brother, oh, it's my teacher, oh, it's my mom when my beaker overflows. But we actually start to look at what was happening in those interactions with that person, because we can't do anything about the person. You can't sell your sibling. Trust me, I have 3. That was just not an option. You can't quit school and you can't move out, when they're that young. But what we can look at is what was getting in the way during the interactions with that person, because that's a skill that we can start to develop and build. Those are some of the things that we can start to problem solve. We then take a look at how do we know that our beaker is filling? What are some of those early warning signs? Again, it's very individualized. What fills my beaker is very different than my early warning signs to know my beaker's filling is very different than what somebody else's beaker warning signs might be. Here's some examples that you can see. Again, they have a checklist that they can go through. And these checklists that I'm describing are also available on the website as well. But it might be, their eyebrows start pulling together, or they're speaking a little bit louder, or maybe they're not speaking at all, or they're speaking faster, or they're walking away, or they're crying, or their heart's pounding, or, maybe there's a funny feeling in their stomach. And as we start to learn the early warning signs, we compare it to, the warning signs on a car, because sometimes kids will assign shame and blame to this. If somebody says, hey, I noticed that this is what happens when your beaker's filling. Maybe your face looks a little bit like this. Sometimes we can be met with resistance. I don't do that, because they assign some shame to that. It must mean there's something wrong with me. But we'll talk about, just like cars have early warning systems, they've got the blinkers, the brake lights, the check engine, the door ajar, the gas light, which we all know is a very important one to have. And the more expensive the car, the more warning signs they are. So it's actually a really positive thing to know what our warning signs are, because that just gives us time to be able to empty our beaker before it's too late. And I'll often say, these warning signs are like a gas light on the car. If the gas light comes on, I've got a couple of choices. I can ignore it, but I'm not going to go very far for very long, or it allows me time to pull into a gas station, fill up so I can keep going. Just like any of these things, our warning signs is kind of like our gas lights coming on, and we can ignore them, but that means our beaker is likely going to continue to fill, possibly until it overflows, or we can recognize it as a warning. Beaker's on the rise. Let's choose a strategy to help empty my beaker before it's too late. And so again, then we start to learn what are some things that help empty your beaker. And so again, very individualized. What empties one beaker might be very different than what empties another person's beaker. And when we're going through the checklist and determining different things to help empty their beaker, we always want to make sure that we have things that we can use in our different environment, things that we can use at home, at school, at hockey practice, if we're out about at camp, at grandma's house. Because if the only thing that we have on our list are things like talk to mom, pet the dog, have a nap, take a shower, great if we're at home, but what happens if those are only options presented to us when we're at school? And none of those are a possibility. So it's making sure that we have things available to us in our different environments. Again, these are just a very small few of the examples or ideas. Chewing gum, which can sometimes actually help with increased concentration and focus. Squeezing a stress ball, sensory items, listening to music, watching TV, something active, going for a walk, going for a run, trampoline, basketball. And we actually even make different keychains with some of the different ways to help empty our beaker. So here's some of my ways, to laugh, sit by the fireplace, go to the beach, getting a hug from somebody, taking a nap. I mean, I don't know why I ever fought naps when I was in kindergarten, because I would do anything to bring those back. But there are lots of different ways in which you can then empty your beaker. And again, where this is very helpful is it's a visual cue and reminder. So as their beaker's filling, they're not able to remember, they're not able to pull on that executive function skills to remember. So if they have something visual, whether it's a keychain, a checklist, a cue card, they can then go to that list, choose something on it, attempt to empty their beaker, and then if that doesn't work, they can go on to the next thing that's on their list and give that a try. One thing I didn't mention when I was showing the demonstration with the beaker filling to overflowing, one thing to keep in mind is that when anybody has moved into that kind of rage territory or meltdown, MRI studies have actually showed that if you were to open up their head and take a look at their brain, that prefrontal cortex that's required for the problem solving, the language processing, the executive function skills, all of that has actually turned a different color, and you've dropped a functioning level. And that's for anybody. So when somebody is in a rage, when a youth is in a rage, attempting to problem solve, give them information, use words is not going to work. It literally is just about batten down the hatches and safety for all at that point. And then once that beaker starts to empty, their brain has come back online, then going in to do some of that problem solving afterwards, or even doing some of that proactively when we see it's a area of regular concern, which I'm going to talk about in a moment when we get to the problem solving portion. Okay, detours. Detours, we've got detour cards also available on our website. So we stress the importance of learning how to take a break, or what we call a detour, to be able to empty our beaker when our beaker is no more than halfway full. Again, once we've gotten past that halfway mark, we are on our way to brains going offline, won't be able to make the good choices that we could when our beaker is lower. So the earlier the intervention, the better. Sometimes kids are like, sounds like a fancy timeout to me. So I do a lot of work to show this is not a timeout. This is actually a very valuable skill that we even need as adults. It is not a consequence. You are not in trouble. In fact, the first word on the I need a detour card is I, which means they are determining, oh, my beaker's starting to fill, early warning signs. I need to take a break. Then we talk about creating detour spaces, whether you're at school, having a spot where if they hold up the card, they know exactly where they're going. The teacher knows where they're going. At home, they can use, either verbalize it, hold up the card, whatever they're comfortable with, and everybody's aware of where that detour spot is and can check in on them once their beaker starts to empty. Some kids at school, they're like, I am not holding up an I need a detour card. Are you nuts? And that's okay, because really it's about the concept that I'm interested in. So if you're not comfortable holding up a detour card, no problem. Maybe it's a secret signal to your teacher, or a ruler that you put on your desk, or something that just kind of blends in, but you and your teacher know that's the secret code to detour, and off to your predetermined detour spot you are able to go. I will also mention too, the same thing with the beaker keychains when you're doing beaker check-ins, often very valuable to do them at school or in different environments, or when they're returning or transitioning to or from a different environment. But again, some kids will say, I'm not pulling out a beaker keychain, or I don't really love the beaker language. That's okay. Again, it's really about the concept that I'm interested. So if they're more comfortable doing a 5 count on what it is, 5 being full, 0 being empty, and they're just going to show you kind of where they're at using numbers, no problem. Maybe it's a color scheme, green being empty, yellow being filling, red being full. Whatever it is they're comfortable, use that, because really it's about the concept and the idea that we want to communicate. So whether it's for beaker check-ins, communicating that they need a detour, how to take a detour. A thing I will mention about the detour is, remember, it's going to take practice and skill development for them to either be able to identify their early warning signs and their need for a detour, and then to initiate a detour. It may be a struggle for quite a few of our youth in the beginning, and we may notice their early warning signs before they do. But at that point, if you were to suggest a detour, they might think, I don't need a detour, I'm fine. And it becomes kind of that power struggle. Where it can then be helpful is if you're noticing early warning signs, they haven't quite developed the skill yet to be able to either initiate or take the detour when suggested. Because again, it's not a timeout, they're not in trouble, we're not sending them on a detour, we're merely suggesting. You may be able to disguise it with a helpful task, at school. Hey, Johnny, can you take this down to the office for me? I don't care if it's a folder that just says hi with a piece of paper in it, or hey, do you mind helping me move some books around in the library? Or can I get you to help me clean off this desk back here? Because they're then getting the movement break, they're getting the break that they need without having to ask for it when they're not quite skilled enough yet to be able to do that. Sensory items, also very helpful, beaker emptying strategies. So whether they're at school, again, at home, in the car, I often suggest having a sensory kit or detour pack that can go with them that might have some of these different items, whether it's a fidget ball, a weighted lizard, weighted blanket, just books in a backpack that's a little bit weighted, gum to chew on things. There might be Tuileries straws that they can chew on, TheraBands that they can put at the bottom of their desk, so that they can kind of apply that pressure with their legs on the desk if they're needing some of that movement, or all kinds of different fidget items. I just have a few here, that I can show. So there's different things. So it might be, blocks that you can move around. The fidget spinners that became a little bit threaded, I think, for a while, for a time when they kind of really took off with all the hype. But again, when used appropriately for the people that actually need it, it can be a very helpful tool. Or my favorite is just this spinny one. And I had this one given to me and I don't know where they got it. So I have to be so careful not to break it because I'm not sure I know where to replace it. Although Amazon has some really fabulous options on there as well, including things like Theraputty or things that they can just manipulate in their hand, which helps with that sensory input. It helps with focus and attention, and it can often be a very helpful beaker emptying strategy as well. Relaxation strategies, very important. We teach our youth how to do that deep diaphragmatic breathing, which is the fastest way to bring us from amygdala brain back into our prefrontal cortex. So when our brain detects, oh, you're in danger or something's going wrong, it goes into our amygdala brain in an attempt to protect us, doesn't recognize the difference between real versus perceived threat. Our body's completely activated. We're into this fight, flight, freeze mode. And so that deep diaphragmatic breathing can be very effective in kind of bringing us back online and being able to start to then put into a thought process about how we're going to solve a specific problem. Also, progressive muscle relaxation is a really great relaxation strategy. A lot of our youth, especially youth that have tics and have experienced different strain and stress in their body, or even people that are anxious and started to carry their stress in their body, may have not even realized that they are starting to carry that. And this has kind of become their norm. And you say, okay, we're going to teach you how to relax. And you think, why? I am relaxed. And we forget that our shoulders are actually supposed to be down here. So the progressive muscle relaxation is a way to tense and release any muscle in your body, and it helps trick our bodies into learning how to relax again. So for example, it might be squeezing my fists and holding it, and releasing it. And my body starts to remember what it feels like to release some of that stress and tension in my fingers, or pushing my feet onto the floor. You can do a full body script where you just start. It might be with eyebrows raised or down, or cheeks out or shoulders up. That's my favorite. I always feel so much tension released in my neck and my back when I'm able to do that. And there's lots of different guided progressive muscle relaxation that you can access on apps or YouTube, or Mind Shift app developed by Anxiety Canada is a wonderful app for youth that experience any kind of anxiety, and it has a place to do some of this, the progressive muscle relaxation, the breathing, some of the other relaxation strategies, some grounding techniques that can be very helpful. Again, when we get stressed or anxious, our whole body responds. So this is a way to help settle our body as well, so that we can start to settle our thoughts and choose a different path versus the one that's probably going to lead to the filling or even overflowing beaker. And so when we think about some of these things that we have in either conversation with schools or other environments or even in families, when we think about, all of those different things that we're just talking about, knowing your beaker fillers, early warning signs, beaker emptying strategies, detours, sensory items, relaxation strategies, sometimes there can be some question or even resistance to, well, I can't let them use that in the school, because if I let little Johnny use a stress ball, then I have to get a stress ball for everybody. And they're getting to that age where they should be able to manage some of their emotions on their own. They should be outgrowing some of those things. So I'm going to start to wean them off of that. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they can use it, but Tuesday, Thursday, I want them to do without. But when we think of all those things that we just talked about, are to somebody with leaky brakes what a wheelchair is to somebody that can't walk or has mobility issues, it starts to shift our understanding of those things. These aren't just strategies that may enhance their learning or their ability to cope. They are required for their learning in the school environment or other environments, and for their ability to cope and to build these skills as well. So it helps shift that, because we would never say, well, you know, if I let you use your wheelchair, then I'm gonna have to get one for everybody, or you're getting to that age where you shouldn't need it anymore, I'm going to start to wean you off. Of course, we would never dream of saying that about a wheelchair. And so when you start to shift and understand that that's what these strategies and tools are for somebody with leaky brakes, they are the same required enhancement to be able to actually build those skills and required for those. Okay, shifting really quickly now into the collaborative and proactive solutions to problem solving. Again, this Dr. Ross Green, creator of the CPS, one of the co-creators of the CPS model, has a lot of really great information on his website, livesinthebalance.org. There is a slide at the end that references all the places where you can find some of this material. But this is going to be just a very, very brief introduction and overview. So problems, difficulties, you know, there's always been three ways to solve the problem. My way, which I always thought was the right way, but apparently it's not always the right way. Working it out with the other person, or dropping the expectation for now. Dr. Ross Green describes that as plan A, B, and C when it comes to problem solving. So if you think about that plan A, this would be the adult imposed will. A lot of us were probably raised with this type of parenting style, you know, a little bit more of that authoritarian, or no, because I said so. If you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Or you've got to the count of three, 1, 2, 3. You know, that would be more in line with that adult type approach to problem solving. Using this style of approach to an area of difficulty or problem will likely fill the child's beaker, if not filling both of your beakers, and it doesn't actually teach them any problem-solving skills or skills that they can take with them for future problems with other people as well. So it's that very authoritarian, adult-driven, because I said so, no questions, no discussion, just do it, ends up often filling the youth beaker, doesn't teach any skills to be able to take forward with them for problem solving. But one little caveat I will say is that in, you know, extreme safety risk type behaviors or concerns, it is always basket A. We do not sit down and negotiate why they cannot do a really dangerous behavior. We know that we stop them and we keep them safe. When safety is a concern, it is always basket A. But when it comes to solving a problem that, you know, doesn't have that same kind of safety concern to it, or we're just, how come you're not showering at night, or we can't get them to, you know, brush their teeth, or finish their math homework, or get to school on time, or get off the video games, the plan A approach won't be the one that probably teaches them those skills to be able to do that. The C approach is the kind of the drop it approach, maybe a little bit more kind of sometimes described or appears to look a little bit more of a pushover. This is often one that, you know, we may refer to as adults when they are gearing up for the most epic temper tantrum in the middle of the grocery store. So we're often using this approach to just drop the expectation for now, try to avoid that temper tantrum, be able to move on with the moment. But the problem is that's probably now really filling your beaker, and it still did not teach the child any useful problem-solving skills that they can take with them. So they haven't actually learned anything from that approach as well. One thing that I will say about the plan C, though, is when we start to think about all the different areas that we can problem solve, you can't problem solve everything all at once. So you might have morning routines, evening routines, getting to school on time, getting off the video game, and completing chores as all areas that are pretty regularly difficult. So we need to problem solve all of them. Well, trying to problem solve all of them at once would be overwhelming for everybody. So we might say, you know what, we're going to pick the shower and the morning routines. We're going to plan C, the other three for now, in the sense that we're not going to focus on those right now. Doesn't mean we're not circling back to them, but we're going to put a pin in that or pause them, kind of put them in a parking lot, if you will, to prioritize the other two and then come out and pick those other ones up at a later time. The flip-flopper approach, I do love this slide, just to leave it there for a second, is when we're kind of flip-flopping back and forth between the plan A and the plan C. And where that is really difficult for a lot of youth with leaky breaks is that they really strive on predictability and structure. So again, knowing what to do helps make transitions easier. It puts fewer demands on the working memory. Remember, I talked about it, they have a lot of difficulty pulling on hindsight to determine forethought. So the more they repeat a behavior or an instruction or the same similar response to something, the more automatic it becomes. So it makes it much easier for them to operate within that. But if we're flip-flopping back and forth, it's very difficult for them to know kind of what the expectations are, what's it going to be today, what am I going to do? And they might even push back a little bit harder, kind of trying to find that line and that boundary to know kind of where they're at. So the structure and predictability is very, very important, as I'm sure you all know with youth with leaky breaks. So the next one is one that we would want to be in, which is B, so solving the problem together. So this is where youth are learning to identify what their concerns are. They are learning to listen to somebody else's perspective in their problem, and then doing some brainstorming to come up with solutions that are actually going to be meaningful and work for both people. And we're hoping that this approach will actually lower beaker levels because everybody's getting their needs met at this point. And it's actually teaching the youth skills that they're having difficulty with and that they can then take forward with them in future problem solving as well. This is just a recap of those three that I just shared. So I'm going to skip right over that and go right into the, okay, basket B. How do we do it? How do we get started? Where do we do? So we use the EPI kind of analogy here. You can see the EpiPen that is up on the screen there. So the 3 steps to coming up with a plan B is empathy, problem definition, and invitation. And the reason why we use the EpiPen analogy is just like an EpiPen is going to potentially save your life in an anaphylactic shock. We're hoping that these 3 steps to this Epi will also help save the moment and the problem moving forward. Okay. So the whole purpose of the empathy stage is to gather the youth's concern and perspective. This can sometimes be a very difficult step because our opening sentence is actually quite short and allowing them to kind of share that. But as adults, we tend to make assumptions of what the problem is, maybe even jump to what possible solutions are based on our assumptions of what the problem is. And then it's really difficult to even know what the youth's actual concern is. So really what we're doing here is, let's just say taking a shower is a difficult area for this youth regularly. What I would want to do to open up the conversation is say, hey, I see taking a shower is tough. What's up? Or what's going on? Or tell me what sucks about taking a shower. And that's it. Because we want them to be able to start sharing what's difficult about that. Sometimes you might be like, hey, I noticed that you don't like taking showers at night. I think it's probably because of nighttime, but the problem is you're putting us all behind. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip you over to showering in the morning just so we can all get to work on time and school on time. Well, we've assumed that it's because they don't want to. We've already jumped to solutions, which is changing the time of the shower, and we don't actually know what the concern is. So this step, very important to remember, is a solution-free zone. We are literally just opening up the conversation for them to be able to start sharing what their concern is. So these are just some examples of, is this a positive or not so positive way to begin the CPS? I've noticed that you swear at staff and you're disrespectful. Probably a little confrontational, not going to get the desired response and set it up for a positive conversation to be had. I've noticed you want food lots when it's not mealtime. It's a pretty decent way to open it up because you're not putting any assumptions on anything about why it's happening. You're just labeling the behavior that you're seeing. And I've noticed that you don't want to take your medications lately. Kind of weak, could be better. We don't necessarily know they don't want to. We're not really sure what's going on there. So just, hey, I noticed taking medications has been tough lately. Is there something going on or what's up? So that's kind of that first step to the opening up the plan B, that empathy stage. But any one of us have worked with youth, or especially teens, or actually really of any age at any point, you can do the best opening, non-judgmental, non-assumption, perfectly worded empathy. And what's a response that you could very likely get? I don't know, or nothing, or that dreaded silence. So Dr. Ross Green talks a lot about drilling strategies. And again, there's a whole list of the drilling strategies and how to use them on his website as well. We call them fishing strategies just because in our live presentation, we actually do a fishing activity with people that are in the group that we're doing, or if we're doing one of those workshops. So it's very similar. We just changed the drilling to the fishing strategies. But 4 of those fishing strategies are things like clarifying questions. Hey, I don't think I understand that. Can you share more about that? Or how come? Or why? Kind of gets them continuing to talking to share what some of their concerns are. Or if at this point you have an idea of what the problem might be, this is where you can now bring it to the table. Hey, mind if I take a guess? Or is it because of this that's been difficult? And they're going to tell you yes or no. And even if it's no, at least we have more information than we did a few minutes ago. A lot of that reflective listening. I hear what you're saying, or you just shared this with me. Do I have that right? Or so what I'm hearing you say is that when that happens, that's really upsetting for you. It allows them to hear that they are being heard, and that you're understanding what they're saying. And again, often very important in the beginning when we're first practicing this with you is the reassurance. You are not in trouble. I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I really, truly do want to hear from you what's difficult about this. Because again, sometimes they think this is just a fancy way for you to tell me what to do. So it's going to take practice. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to get that buy-in to see, wow, you really are listening to what I'm saying. You are taking some of my ideas as possible solutions, and it really helps them in that way. The next step is that problem definition, going back to that EpiPen. So we've got the empathy. We don't move on from the empathy stage until we have the youth's full concern on the table. Once we have their full concern, and it might be a list of things, or it might just be a couple of things, then we're ready to move on to the problem definition, which is where we call them cheerleaders, which are the adults, teachers, parents, extended family members, share what their concern. So I appreciate what you've been telling me. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, the thing is, or my concern is, or what my concern is this. Now it's allowing the youth an opportunity to hear a different perspective, somebody else's point of view, to get that conversation. So we've heard their concern. Now is the adults or the other person's opportunity to share what their concerns are. We are still solution free. We're not jumping to any possible ways to share or to decide what a possible solution is. We are just in that problem definition. We've heard the concerns. Here's the other side of the concerns. Then once we fully have both concerns on the table, now we can move into that invitation to problem solve. This is where we start brainstorming possible ideas to solve that problem together. So we recap what the concerns are, and then we say, okay, let's think about how we can possibly solve this problem. I often try to get the youth to go first if they're able to. If they're a little bit stuck, then you might take, the adult giving a few suggestions or ideas to kind of get that ball rolling. But one thing to mention is put every idea on the table. Even if it feels outrageous, even if you think this is never going to happen, if they say, pay me $5 and I'll shower every day, that's probably not going to happen. But generate the idea, put it on the list, because once you have all the solutions that you can think of, then you're going to go back and look at each one and you're going to weigh it against 3 things. Is it realistic? Is it win-win? Does it work for both of us? And is it doable? If it's not, that solution is crossed off the list and we go on to the next one. And so it's not until an idea is realistic, win-win, and doable. So paying you $5 every time to shower, well, that's not exactly a win-win. We're going to be broke. It's not realistic or doable. That one would come off the list. So it's actually pretty amazing to hear how creative the youth can get. And if we choose one of the ideas, if it works for us as well, that they've come up with, it even goes to a little bit more buy-in for them to want to continue to do this process for future problems, because they're seeing, wow, I am being heard. I'm able to share my concerns. I've never had to stop and think about what was hard about that before, but now I kind of have an idea. So then we can make sure that we are finding those solutions that work, that solve the problem. This slide is just reflective of really making sure that we have the right concern on the table. So if we've done all the best problem solving, we've come up with something, we've put those solutions into practice, and the rages are still happening, we might have a couple of things that we need to do here. We might need to go back to the brainstorming list and make sure, is there a better one that we could try? Is there another alternate solution that we can put into practice instead? Let's go back to the drawing board and choose one of those. or we may have to go back to the concern to make sure we actually have the right concern on the table. So this poster is just an example of, just kind of this example of a youth that was struggling every time they had to go to self-management group, and his concern was because I want pizza. So they do all this great problem solving, and so it came up with some great ideas. You have snacks, you can stop for pizza maybe a couple times after group, or maybe we'll get something a little bit different like a donut or a muffin at Tim Hortons instead. You come up with all these great solutions and the rages are still happening. Well, what if we went back and did a little bit more investigating to the concern? And the concern was actually that they were getting really hot in the car. Is any amount of pizza, muffins, or Tim Hortons or snacks going to solve that problem? No, we need to turn on the air conditioning, or maybe they need to sit in the front seat if they're starting to feel a little bit heated in the back seat, or open up a window. So if our solutions aren't working, it could be because we just don't have the right solution that we've put into practice yet. We can maybe try another one on our list, or it may be an indication that we don't quite have the right concern on the table, and we need to go back and revisit that one a little bit more, because if our solutions don't match the concern, they're not going to solve the problem. Okay, just a couple more things I want to say here about Plan B is that it can be tough, especially when we're first learning how to do it. It can be a beaker filler at times. So if at any point in the process, either one of your beakers start to fill, the youth's our own beaker, stop the process. You do not have to get through all 3 steps or the whole process in one sitting. It might take a few days. It might even take a week to be able to complete that. And that's okay. So if beakers are filling, stop the process, come back when beakers have gone down a little bit more, and we're able to continue the conversation. Taking breaks or detour can be really helpful. Using strategies, maybe for some of the younger kids, if they're really having a hard time kind of with some of that, and you're doing some of that educated guessing, maybe it's playing hot and cold, or kind of making a little bit of the game out of that. But then also remembering that these are all things that work towards that skill deficit and can actually be incorporated onto an IEP, even at school, just like those other strategies that we talked about with the detours, understanding the beaker, the sensory items, all of those things can be added. And this is a strategy that can be used within the school system or in other areas as well. And it helps build those skills in terms of being able to express a concern, understanding what it is, hearing and taking somebody else's perspective. There's that cognitive shifting, generating ideas and problem solving, and building towards even more flexible thinking. This is I'm just going to highlight this too. This is on our website as well. A really great cheat sheet that literally walks you through the steps of how to do some of that, how to get to a B, and we call it mapping basket B. You can see it starts off there with that, hey, I've noticed that blank, what's up? Starts up the conversation, take the arrow over, allow the youth to identify their concerns. You shift over to the next box after that's been completed, share your concerns, and then you can see there's a space there for that brainstorming and generating ideas so that you can track them if that's a little bit easier as well. Again, this is on our website, and lots of really, really great information at Dr. Ross Green's website as well, which is you can see up there on your screen. So our website is the www.leakybreaks.ca. If you click on the self-management virtual toolbox, all the information I was just talking about, the frustration beaker, the checklist, the beaker keychains, the detour cards, all of those are under on that website, including that mapping basket B under the problem solving video and link there. And then Dr. Ross Green's website, livesinthebalance.org. A couple other books that are really great, Lost at School, really wonderful resource for teachers or educators. And The Explosive Child is another book that he wrote for parents and understanding some of that explosive behavior as well. Quick recap of here's your new toolbox of resources that I threw at you very quickly in a short period of time. But the beaker check-ins, knowing our early warning signs, ways to empty our beaker through detours, different relaxation strategies or beaker emptying strategies, and having a different problem-solving approach, attempting to get to that plan B versus sometimes feeling stuck in that plan A and that plan C. And I think we did it.